There's so many songs.
Action!
Okay, so if you saw our last video, we were out shooting, and I got to shoot this Zco 5-27 for the first time. And when we did the initial unboxing and stuff, we said that once we took it out and we shot it, you know, we were going to report on it. Just give you our initial impressions. Now, here's the thing. I was shooting this 5-25 Police Marksman 2 Schmidt-Bender on a 7 mag right before I went to shoot this gun. So all I did was I sat down, shot the 7 mag, picked the whole gun up, took it over, set it down on a table, picked this gun up, took it back, and set it right on the bench. So there wasn't 2 minutes between shooting this scope and shooting this scope. And so what this is going to be is, it's not going to be some in-depth technical review. What this is going to be is, it's just my initial impressions from taking this scope out and shooting it. And you realize it wasn't a long shooting session. Okay, it was just, we shot it, we needed to get done what we needed to do, and like I said, it's just my initial impression. So this is the way it's going to be. When I sat down, put this on the bench, right after looking through this, my very first impression of this scope was, wow, it is clear, it is bright, and it is sharp. It was definitely sharp. There's no doubt about it. So everybody's gonna, I know the very first thing everybody's gonna want to say, was it better, was there more clarity than the Schmidt-Bender? It's very hard to tell. Unless you had them in a fixture and you were looking back and forth through each one, like right side by side. Let's put it this way, they are very close, very, very close. I might actually, by a fraction, of a hair, I might say the Zco was maybe a little bit more clear. In other words, I could see a little bit better through the Zco. Now here's the thing, it was a nice sunny day, right? It was a nice sunny day. It was good shooting except for the fact that it was windy. But as far as, being optically, it was as good a day as you can get. So you're not going to be able to really tell. And unless you're going to shoot them right at dawn, looking into the sun, right at dark, low light, etc., you're not going to be able to tell. All I'm saying is, initial impression, clear, bright, and sharp. So that was, I would say, slight advantage Zco. Now, the next thing. This is the eye box, okay? The eyepiece, the eye box on these scopes. So when I sat down to look through it, all right, maybe I better back up. What I'll tell you about the Schmidt-Bender is, I would call it very forgiving. In other words, eye relief, in and out, very forgiving, and right to left. Okay, very forgiving. When I sat down to look through this, I would say it was a little, again, this stuff's really close, I would say it was a little less forgiving. In other words, the eye relief was a little more critical, right to left, where it blacks out, was a little more critical. Now, here I want to say something about that, because I'm very used to this scope. I've shot many of these scopes, this exact model, plus I've been shooting this one forever. So it could be that I'm just a little more used to what I see in this one. Because as I shot this, as it went on, it didn't seem to bother me as much. In other words, I was getting used to it. But again, in the eye box, I would give the Schmidt-Bender, again, very slight advantage. Unless you had both of them, you would never be able to tell. So these first two points, they're very, very close. Now, this next one is not very close. And I'm going to have to put my cheaters on here so I can see. So, okay, she needs to bring the camera in, and I want to show you something. This eyepiece is fast focus, and this is rubber, right? This is rubber, and there is an index mark right there. Okay, so the way that you get the crosshairs, the way that you focus the crosshairs to be sharp is, and I don't want to do it because this is set, is you grab hold of this and you turn it to the, it has markings on it, by the way, plus and minus, but it's really irrelevant. Turn it quickly to the right and the crosshairs will get blurry. Bring it back, and at some point the crosshairs will get sharp. And by the way, you need to be looking at a clear sky or a blank white wall when you do this, so that you're actually focusing on how sharp that the crosshairs are. But turn it quickly and make it blurry, bring it back, look at where your index mark is when it gets clear, okay? Now, turn it the opposite direction, it will get blurry, bring it back, look at where your index mark is, and that's it. I mean, that's just, it's very, very simple, and it's very fast. This is what I would call a fast focus eyepiece. And these are on a lot of scopes. This is what's on the Collis, this is what's on the Schmidt-Bender. I mean, it's on a lot of different scopes. Okay, I like that. All right, now, this is the Zco. All right, first of all, no rubber eye ring. Second of all, this is metal. Okay, and I wouldn't go as far as to say it's sharp, but these raised sections, so that you can get hold of it for texture, you don't want to get hit in the face with that, let's say that. So the way this one works is this is the part you turn that focuses, this is the lock ring, right? And it locks it down. This must have, I don't know, I'm being funny here, but this must have like 200 threads per inch. When you unlock it and you start to turn it, you got to turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it. I mean, it's like you're turning it forever until eventually the crosshair, the reticle will get blurry. Then you start to turn it back forever and forever and forever and forever. Finally, it'll start to get sharp. Here's the issue. There's no index mark. Okay? If this was my personal scope, I would put a little dot of white paint or something on there so that I had an index mark. So, okay, you've gone one way, you brought it back, you focused it. Now go the opposite way. Forever, forever, forever. You're turning it, turning it, turning it. I mean, like, dirt is getting old while you're turning it, okay? And you just keep turning it. So then, bring it back until it gets clear, and that's where you're at. And then lock it down. So, between these two systems, again, this is my preference. I absolutely give the advantage to Schmidt-Bender. Not even close. I really don't like this. Okay, so while we're working from the back, we're just going to work forward on this. The next thing is the power ring, okay? So, this is the power ring on the Schmidt-Bender. It is rubber, and it has these little raised ribs on it. And you can get hold of it fairly easily, right? But, now come and look at the Zco. The Zco is rubber, and it has this little wing on it. All right, by far and away, this is a better system. I actually think this wing did not have to be quite this high. In other words, it could be about half that height, because you can easily get your finger on it. But of these two systems, I say advantage Zco, and again, that's just my preference, okay? Now, oh wait, and right, we better talk about something else, and I didn't get it out, so I don't remember what the model number is. We may have to put that up at the end. So, the reticle in this scope is an H59. An H59 is pretty darn busy, but if you're not going to click, it's definitely, at least I used to think, it was definitely one of the best reticles because it gives you a zillion hash marks. As long as you're paying attention to what you're doing, it's very precise. Let's put it that way. It's very precise. It's a Christmas tree style reticle, and there's really no way I can show it to you. Again, just get on Google anywhere and look up H59 reticle. Okay? So in this one, and again, she'll put this up at the end, or maybe she'll splice it in once we go and get it. It has their own reticle in it, and I got to tell you something. I like it. My favorite all-time reticle ever is called a Gen 2 XR. And it doesn't have enough hash marks on it, not enough reference points, but it's clean. You look in it, that was a premier reticle. That was a Chris Thomas reticle. It's clean. Okay, and I've had some of those, by the way, in Schmidt-Bender. I don't think they offer that anymore. But it's not quite precise enough for doing really fine long-distance work. The reticle that's in this is like a compromise, and I'm going to tell you something. I like it. It is very clean. It's very sharp. It has a little black dot in the middle of it for your center crosshair, for your center point of aim. Very nice. I definitely say advantage Zco, and I mean it may become my new most favorite reticle. It's very nice. It's very nice, yet it gives you all of the information you need to be able to do whatever you need to do at long range. Okay, so that's the reticle. Now we come to illumination. All right, So you realize on a Schmidt bender, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 turrets. This turret is for the illumination, all right? This big thing sticking out right here to the side. On the ZCO, she needs to come over here and focus over here. On the ZCO, the illumination and the parallax is here, right? All right, here's the advantage. When you go to mount a Schmidt bender, it's always a problem. And again, I don't know if she can see this, but you have very little room here to place this ring from where it goes up and flares into the bell. And you have very little room right here where it goes into the illumination apparatus, the illumination turret, right? So what it does is it limits you where you can slide the scope in the rings, where you can set up your eye relief. And it's one of the reasons, by the way, that I like bat receivers with these full piece rails, because if you can't slide the scope in the rings, hopefully you can pick the whole unit up and drop it in the rail where you need it to be to get your proper eye relief. All right, let me tell you something. I do not like this. I absolutely do not like this. It works, but I don't like it. This, you see how much cleaner this is? Way cleaner. You have way more option of sliding the scope forward, sliding the scope rearward. I mean, it's just a better setup. Just absolutely a better setup. And the Collis is like this also. It has only 3 turrets, not 4. Now, if she'd get that back up here and let me tell you something, here's an interesting fact. Years ago, one of our favorite Schmidt bender scopes was the 4 to 16 by 50 Police Marksman 2. They offered them both ways, with illumination and without illumination. The one without illumination was like $1,000 less expensive than the one with illumination. And they were nice scopes. I mean, they really were. And the thing is, we bought them and mounted them on customer guns, and I wanted one, and I ended up not getting one. I so much wish that I had one of them. I have a 4 to 16, but it's the illuminated one, and so it has that extra turret sticking out of there. Why Schmidt bender did that, I do not know. It's probably just whatever the market demands. Anyways, if Schmidt bender would get rid of that and move that into this same system, it would be way better. So, as far as illumination, the controls, I say advantage ZCO, definitely. Now, here's the next thing. And again, I can't show you. I mean, I have no way of showing you what I'm going to say. So the actual illumination itself, you know, this turret has like 11 settings on it, right? If you turn the brightness to maximum on the Schmidt bender scope, it works great in the dark. It works okay in low light, but in daylight, you cannot see it. It's just simply not there. I mean, it's not bright enough, right, to actually use in the daylight. Now, this ZCO, much brighter, much better. I mean, but it's still not quite daylight bright. The Collises, one of the major points that I like about the Collis, one of the major benefits, I think, is that the Collis reticle, when you turn it to maximum, it is so bright that you could not use it at night. Yet, if you wanted to use it in the daytime, it is so bright, it wouldn't matter how bright out it is, you can see it. So, out of these two, in just illumination intensity, advantage ZCO. But, if you really want a bright reticle, the Collis, definitely advantage Collis. Okay, so now there's that. Now, let's go to the turrets themselves, okay? So, I don't know if this is hard to explain, and the thing is, this gun's zeroed, so I don't want to turn it. But you notice that the lower numbers are white, and the upper numbers are yellow. And if you notice right here, there are little windows, right? All right, when you turn this turret, the first revolution is on the white numbers. The second revolution is the yellow numbers, and what happens is a little yellow tab appears inside these windows, so that you have to look and see. If you see yellow, you know you're on the second turn. All right, again, so focus here. Here's the problem with having a visual only indicator. Let's just say that you're in a bad situation, say like battle, and you do not know whether you're on the first revolution or the second revolution. Well, you can't see it. So you would have to turn on a flashlight, light a lighter, something that could be really bad in the wrong situation, okay? It really could, because you turn on a light, you've just given away your position. So I do not like this. On the Zco, I want you to come over here. This is going to be hard to see. On the Zco, all the numbers are white. But right here, right there, there's a little plunger. Call it a little metal stud. When it comes to the second revolution, and again, I don't want to turn it because it's sighted in, but as it comes to the second revolution, that little stud right there pops up. It pops up, and it doesn't stick up way high, but you can easily feel it. Easily feel it, and you can easily see it. So now you can tactile and visual. So you have two indicators to be able to tell you, are you on the second revolution? So again, I would definitely say advantage Zco. All right, now the next thing, when you're out in the field actually wanting to dial in elevation or dial in windage. All right, so look here. On the Schmidt bender, and this is going to be super hard to see, but I'll show you. Right there is a little Allen head screw, and right over here is another little Allen head screw. And the way you do this is, if you just, right now it's engaged, all right? So I should make this clear. This turret, as long as those screws are tight, this turret is engaged. So if you're turning the turret, you're moving your point of impact, all right? On this turret is locked down, all right? You can't turn it right now, all right? So when it's in the locked position, it cannot move. So to move it, say you want to dial elevation or you want to dial windage, you grab hold of it and you pull it straight up. And it actually pulls up, not easy, but not hard, just right, okay? It's like Goldilocks, it's just right. You pull it up and then you can turn it wherever you need to turn it, right? You want to dial elevation, well, just dial your elevation in. When you get to where you want to be, say you want to put in, you know, I don't know, you're going to 400 yards, you want to put 1.2 mils in, that's 12 clicks. Dial your 12 clicks, push it back down, it's locked in, all right? Definitely, in my opinion, advantage Zco. Because this is just, it can't move. You know what I mean? When it's in a scabbard, when it's in a case on a four-wheeler, who knows? When you're just dragging it down the side of the mountain, it's not going to move. Once it's locked down, it's locked down. Now, in Schmidt Bender's defense, I will say that this turret is fairly hard to turn. In other words, it's not easy. It just doesn't, you just don't put these clicks in easily. It's very, very, very positive, right? Very positive clicks. So the chance that it's going to get knocked off accidentally is slim. But like us, we use horses. Anybody that has horses understands horses can break anything. I mean, if they can break it, they will. It's like a giant, 1,000-pound 3-year-old, okay? They bust stuff. Okay, so I say, as far as locking turrets and the way you do it, the way you adjust it, I say advantage Zco. Now here's what I would call the downside. So to reset your turret, once you get this, say you get zeroed up and you want to actually set it to 0. So again, you have these two little Allen head screws right here, and they take just a little wee Allen wrench, right? Guess what? Zco has that same system. One little Allen screw right there, and one little Allen screw right there with a pathetic little Allen wrench, right? So you do the same thing. It works both on the same. You loosen the screws to disengage the turret. Loosen the screws to disengage the turret. All right. Here's the thing now, and again, this could just be this scope, I don't know. But every single time in my life when I don't like these screws, but they seem to be very positive. In other words, when you loosen them, they loosen. And when you tighten them back down, and I'm talking about the Schmidt Bender now, they seem to stay right where they are. I have never had one of these screws loosen on a Schmidt Bender. All right, you lock them down and they just stay there. You think, well, that's going to fall out or it's going to come loose. It doesn't seem to do that. All right, on this one, we had to mess with the elevation and the windage a couple of times while we were out shooting because we were zeroing the guy's gun. So we had to get on paper, etc. Plus, I wanted to, for lack of a better term, I wanted to play with it just to get the feel of the scope, right? So loosening them, no problem. But 2 different times we tightened them, went back to shooting, and then when I went to do it again, one of the screws had worked its way, I will not say loose, but it certainly was not as tight as I had made it, okay? So whether that's an issue or not, I don't know. If this was my scope, knowing what I know already about it, what I would do is, once I got zeroed, my true zero, I'd put a small drop of Loctite, of blue Loctite on each one, run them in, and I wouldn't worry about it, because it's still locked, right? Once your zero's on, you're zero. This is only talking about resetting the turrets. But I don't like either one of those systems, so I'm not going to give the advantage to either one of those. They need to, whatever optical engineers out there listening to this, we need to figure out a better system than that. Those little screws and that Allen wrench, that's rinky-dink. That's rinky-dink chicken crap. And here's the thing. So they only have 2. Now, if you know me at all, it's like, okay, why don't they have 8? Oh no, why don't they have 10? I mean, actually, if it was me, I'd have like 18. All right, I'm like overkill, Mr. Overkill. There's no amount that is enough for me, because I want things fail safe. All right, as positive as they can be. But truthfully, in my opinion, the whole system is somewhat flawed. So I'm not going to give any advantage to that. Now, here's another thing. All right, so you're out there and you're going to re-zero your turret, right? So I want you to come over here and look at this. This has been a pet peeve of mine literally for years. If you can see right there, you see here's the 0, right? And down inside that little window right there, there's like an upside down triangle. So say you're zeroed up, now you're going to loosen your screws and you want to zero your turret. In other words, your reticle's zeroed, but you want to zero the turret. It's nearly impossible. Okay, it is nearly impossible to get that exactly on that little upside down right here, on that little upside down triangle. And what's really interesting is a lot of times we'll be out shooting and we'll have 2, 3, 4, 5 guys there. So I'll put on cheaters, I'll set it exactly where I think it's perfect. And then I'll say to my wife, well, what's that look like? Oh, that's got to go a little bit to the right. And another guy will say, no, that's got to go a little bit to the left. And the other guy will look at it and say, well, no, I think it's got to go a little bit to the right. You know what? You cannot tell. You can't get it perfect. And the issue with that then is when you go to dial your numbers, if you don't count them, you can't tell. Let's just say you were going to dial 1.2, right? 400 yards. You can't tell whether it's on 1, 1.5, 1.2. You can't tell. All right, so I count on Schmidt-Bender. If I'm going to click, I count the clicks. So say I'm going to put in 6 mils. 6 mils will put you on at 1,000 yards. I count 60 clicks. I'll go like I'll count it like up to the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Go fast to the 5, and then I'll go 51, 52, 53, 54, till I get to 60. Because you can't tell. You can tell close, but not to the individual click. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to look at this. Okay? Look at the engraving on this turret. This engraving and these designations, these markings, are far superior. Far and away superior. When you want this on 0, you line it up with that, it is on 0. So what I'm saying here is, as far as the engraving, as far as the markings, clear advantage Zco. I like this. It isn't even close. I've been fighting with those Schmidt-Bender engravings since the beginning. I've never liked it. This is nice. That was one of the first things. As soon as we went to use this, I'm like, whoa, this is way better, way better. You can be precise. Okay, so now let's see, what else? The parallax on both of these. Now this is an interesting thing. So you see, both of these parallax turrets are marked, you know, from 0 to infinity, 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever. Now here's an interesting thing about Schmidt-Bender. And by the way, I want to make something clear before I say that. The markings on a parallax turret are suggestions, okay? Because, again, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into parallax, but it can change. So just because you're shooting at 100 yards or 100 meters and you reach over and turn that dial to 100, there is no guarantee that the parallax is truly 100% dialed out. You may have to have it on 80, you might have to have it on 110, right? But here's the interesting thing. Most of the time, when you're shooting at 200 yards, most of the time you dial the parallax out the way you're supposed to do it without even looking at that, and then when you look over at the dial, guess what? It says 200. which is pretty amazing, really. All right, so also in the Schmidt-Bender parallax adjustment, again, I'm using really non-specific terms, but I don't know the language to use. It's forgiving. It is very forgiving. So, I'll have my left hand on it. I'm moving my eye around. I'm watching the little dot on the target. I'm spinning it, and when it dials out, it just dials out. And there's a little bit of forgiveness in there. It's like not pinpoint razor sharp. In other words, like there's only just this one point where there's no parallax. There's actually a little bit of slop in there. Not slop in the feel, but in what you're actually seeing. Again, I realize this is, I'm not describing this very well, but pretty good. This also has all the marks and everything, and when we were out shooting, we only shot it at 100. I did notice, because I went ahead and dialed the parallax out using my eye, I did notice that whenever I looked at the dial, well, it said 100, right? Okay. But what I also noticed was when I was running the dial, and again, unless you had both of these scopes, you would never know this, all right? It was more critical. Definitely more critical, like parallax, 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 out, okay? And then just barely move the dial, and it would be out again. In other words, it was a narrow, and not focus is not the right word, it was a narrow range where that it actually was parallax free, or apparently parallax free. So, again, it's very close. Unless you had them both, I will give slight advantage to Schmidt-Bender on the parallax. Okay, now, next thing. So, you realize, hopefully you realize, Schmidt-Benders are 34 millimeter main tubes. 34 millimeter is like very mainstream. Been around for years and years now. 34 millimeter main tube. All right. Zco, 36 millimeter main tube. Definitely not as popular. All right, so really the size of the tube, the size of the actual tube is irrelevant, right? It makes a bigger scope, yes, but they do that for all type of optical advantages because you got way more room in there to put good stuff in there, right? That's not very specific, but all right. Here's the thing. 34 millimeter is very popular, so what it does is it gives you lots of options for rings. Lots and lots. There's so many different ones. Now, it just so happens, and I probably showed this before. What is this right here? I've showed these before. This is the main ring that we always use, and yes, I am plugging Badger rings right now, Badger Ordnance. So we use this ring a lot. This is a Max 50 ring, 34 millimeter, right? All right. So you see, this is a 6-screw ring, which I really like. Some people don't. I'm not going into that right now. But the real issue with these is the way they go on the rail. It is very simple to set it on, torque it down, and go to work. All right? These rings are not, at least as of this moment that I'm aware of, those Badger rings are not available in 36 millimeter. And again, now I did not do an exhaustive search, but I just wanted to see what all 6 millimeter rings, 36 millimeter rings were available, and there wasn't a lot. Okay, now so I want to be really clear on this, what I'm about to say. You understand that when we go out to shoot, a lot of times we have one scope and 3, 4, maybe sometimes even 5 guns, rarely. And so I spend half of my day moving the scope from one gun to the next gun to the next gun. It needs to be easy. It needs to be really functional. It needs to work good. It needs to be repeatable. I have found that these Badger rings, a lot of times, you know, say I'm shooting a 7 mag. I got it zeroed up at 100. Now I'm done shooting. I lift the scope off and say I set it on a 300 Winchester. Now on a bat receiver. That's important. Set it on a bat receiver. Very first shot out of the gun might be 1 inch off of my previously established zero, which is amazing. Okay, that is amazing to me. And it's really easy to do because all you need is a 1/2 inch wrench, right? To move it from one gun to the next gun. All right, I would really like those same type of rings for this, but like I said, as of this moment, I do not believe they're available. So, here's something I do want to show you. These are Zco rings. And again, very nice rings. Please understand what I'm saying. Very nice rings. They seem very well made. They have a fairly unique system here, how that cams in as you use these screws to pull it down onto the rail. My issue with these is these are Torx, which is good, but you can't get to them. Look, I mean, you almost have to lay the gun on its side to be able to get a wrench in there and tighten or loosen those. Okay, so I want to be clear on this. If you're going to buy one of these scopes and you're going to use a set of these rings and you're going to mount it on one gun and just leave it there, it is not an issue. Not an issue at all. Those are actually very nice rings. But if you're like me and you can't afford to have 10 of these scopes, having a system where you can move one scope to multiple guns for what we do is better. So again, that's going to be an individual thing. I'm not going to say advantage to either one. In all likelihood, optically, this bigger tube is an advantage. But again, you know, it's subjective. It depends what you're going to do, right? So I'm not going to give an advantage to either one of those. What I would like is different style 36 millimeter rings. I would really like that. Now, there's something else I was going to say. I kind of forgot what it was going to be. I don't know. Oh, yes, I do know. Okay. So, here's something too. And this is kind of a pet peeve. So you realize, you know, Schmidt-Bender scope. You're paying $3,000 for one of these scopes. They send these Butler Creek caps with them. All right? Now, they work. We use them. They keep all the dirt and water and stuff out. But it's very often. Like, say a guy's shooting with his bill of his baseball cap sticking out. What will happen is this will be sticking up, and this comes back in recoil, and it snaps it right off. And also, these break right here, right? So, I mean, for what they are, they only cost a few bucks. It's not bad scope covers, but it could be like a zillion times better. Now, here's what Zco offers you, all right? And I like this style of scope cover, right? Goes over the front, use the rubber bands to pull it back. All right, so this is good. Here's the issue I have with it. See this? There's a whole bunch of slop right here. And there's no reason for that slop. They could have made that, you know, they could have made it not slip fit, but say nearly slip fit. So that, you know, when this is like this, if this gun is out in the rain and stuff, it may not get on the lenses, but water is going to collect in there, snow and stuff, even dirt. Because you realize we're in Idaho, and in the middle of the summer, it gets very dusty here. You have this gun on a rack on a four-wheeler, you're going to ride 100 miles on dirt, there's going to be dust in there. Okay, so they should have made that tighter. They should have made these bands a little bit stronger. And back here on the back, so you look, it's even worse. I mean, it's huge, right? They should have made it so that it fits. I do like the fact that they're clear. That's smart thinking because, you know, if an elk jumps up 50 yards away and you don't have time to mess with your covers, you could just look right through it. You know, look right through it and go ahead and use it. So that's something that I also think should be addressed. Again, I'm not going to give an advantage to... I'd give a slight advantage to Zco for these covers because those things break. They work good, but they break. And you can't trust them. One last thing, which we didn't talk about, which I almost was going to miss. You realize this is a 5 to 25. This is a 5 to 27. You think, okay, well, that's only 2 more power. But 2 more power is 2 more power. I mean, when we were out there, I don't shoot a scope on its absolute maximum. So it looks like I was shooting this scope here in about 23, 24, somewhere in there. And I'm usually shooting my Schmidt-Bender at about 22, somewhere in that range also. Again, if you really are trying to shoot small groups out of a very accurate gun under a condition where there's no mirage, being able to go to 27 is just that much more power. So, and one other thing, and I almost forgot that. Remember we were talking about illumination, and I said about the Collis being daylight bright. I almost forgot to say why. Because people will be like, well, why do you want daylight bright? You realize these are first focal plane scopes. So when you turn this scope down to 5, when you turn this scope down to 5, the reticle, the appearance of the reticle gets much smaller. The reticle doesn't actually physically change, but it gets visually much smaller. When you get the whole way down to 5, you almost can't see it. I mean, you really almost can't see it. And let's just say you actually wanted to use the gun on 5 power. Well, if your illumination is so bright that it'll just turn that reticle on and make that thing glowing, guess what? In the Colossus, you can see it. You turn it, I'm thinking specifically of the 3 to 18s, because you can turn it the whole way down to 3, turn that illumination on, and I mean, that thing is just glowing. I mean, no problem seeing it. If you turn the illumination off, it's just like these, you can't see it. I mean, you can see it, but on a dark background, against foliage, you'll never see it, right? And so really, what good is it? You can turn it down to 3, yeah, but you can't see your aiming point. When you can illuminate it, you can see it big time. So, they need to, both of these scopes need to up their game as far as the illumination. It needs to be so bright that in the dark it would be too bright, so that you can turn it down. And the other thing is, I don't want to say this for sure, but I'm pretty sure this one has automatic turn off. That if you leave the illumination on for a certain period of time, it shuts itself down. I haven't experienced it yet, so I don't want to say for sure, but I'm 99% sure that that's right. So here's the deal. I know everybody's going to ask this. So if you could only have one of these, which one would you take? And this is a super hard thing for me because I've been shooting that scope forever. But I'll tell you something. I like this scope. I really like this scope. If they would, if the company would make me a deal, say like at cost, to give me one of these to be my new testing scope, and this is a super important thing though, with rings that I can easily switch the scope from one gun to the other gun, I would use one of these as my new testing scope. Oh, and you know something else I didn't talk about at all, which again, it's not an in-depth test. So unless you're going to do a ladder test, unless you're going to check them, all I can tell you is my initial impression of the clicks, the way they felt, and watching them on the paper, because I'm watching through the paper as I'm putting clicks in to see what's really going on. They seem very precise. Very precise. Maybe more precise than the Schmidt-Bender. And here's the other thing, and of course this takes an in-depth test, which we didn't do. You know, we don't know what the true value is. It should be 0.36 at 100 yards. Now, the thing is, I have tested many different scopes, and they're not all what they say. It can be 0.34, or it could be 0.37. I mean, they're not always exactly what they say. But you realize our targets have grids on them. And so, as you're clicking it, you can watch it. Is it actually moving what it should be? And the thing is, it was. It seemed very precise, very sharp. So the deal is, I would definitely not be afraid of buying one of these scopes. If you had a choice between the two, I would say you cannot go wrong. It's just the features. Which features do you want? You know, this scope is longer, this scope is shorter. This scope's a little bit heavier, this scope is lighter. This scope has 36 millimeter, that scope has 34. This scope, you have to deal with that dang illumination turret. This one has it built in on the side. The deal is, they're both top of the line. Absolutely top of the line. There's no way you'll go wrong buying either one of them. So again, that's just my impression. Hope this guy helped you in some way.